Farm4Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit Podcast.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, listeners. Welcome back to the Farm4Profit Podcast. This is the first show of 2025.
It is, and I want to know if you've already broken your New Year's resolutions.
Not to timestamp this episode at all, but we're excited to kick off 2025 with a bang. Right off the bat, one of the best guests that we've ever interviewed in the past, we get to interview again.
That's always good when we get repeating guests. Usually when we get repeating guests, they have cool new stuff to tell us, and we're pretty excited to hear what it is.
You just sounded like what I would be telling my kids for the presents under the trees. Like, there's some cool new stuff under there.
New stuff. No.
But you got to wait till Christmas.
It kind of is like a gift for adults in the ag industry, I guess. So
I love that. Listeners, there is one thing that is going to be the same as it was in 2024. We still love engaging with you. So we still love ideas being sent to us at farm4profitllc@gmail.com. New this year, Corey's going to start manning the text line. So you can send messages to 515-207-96. Uh-oh.
Nope, I don't know what it is.
It's a new number.
I don't know what
now
it
you
is.
don't want the number to go out? 9640.
No, I don't think that's right either. 505.
Yo 40.
Yo 40. Okay.
YO is 6 is 0.
I don't know. I don't have it wrote down. Why are we both brain farting on that?
It's good.
207-9640.
It's probably too much champagne last night for New Year's Eve.
No.
But no, we thank you for all that you did for us in 24 and can't wait to continue to bring value to you and learn what you guys are looking for here in 2025.
Yeah, we just got through a bunch of planning for the business, for the podcast, and in December, a lot of hours spent doing that, a lot of time. We're pretty excited. Got some pretty cool visions.
Working on the business as well as working in the business.
Yep.
We preach it to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited, though, to chat with our guest today to see if he's been working on his business and what we have going on in that category. Do you think we're going to stick with doing intros?
Probably, at least for this one. I've got one, but how are we going to know how loud this is?
Well, I'll throw headphones on.
Last couple times we did this when we weren't wearing headphones, you couldn't even hear my intro.
Just blew it out.
It was just,
we're good.
Sorry about your speakers.
It's rocking and rolling.
All right. Today on the Farm for Fun show, we are ringing in the new year, 2025. So happy New Year's, everyone. And we're doing it with a past guest of the show. He's passionate about electric hybrid semi-trucks, or semi-trucks that we should say for our Canadian friends. Has a huge following on social media. And we have not only invested our time in watching this guy's content, we have invested our dollars into this company through crowdsourced funding. And let me tell you what, I'm so glad to actually be talking to him. Please welcome from Canada, Mr. Chace Barber of Edison Motors.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back on. What a privilege.
Yes. Thank you for coming back on. We have been chasing you, Chace, for a while now.
Did you write that down last night?
No, I didn't. I just thought of that in my small little brain.
If more money will solve it, then money is not the problem. You see, this is a common issue that we've had to face working with hundreds of family farms over the past 5 years here at Legacy Farmer. A lot of them come into our program looking to organize and structure their operations and really just know their numbers at a deep level. But they come in with this idea of thinking, man, if I could just get another 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, they would just solve all of my problems. But the reality is, and what we've seen, is that this is only treating the symptom. It's not solving the root issue that these operations are facing. And that is what we are fixing inside of Legacy Farmer. Over the past 5 years, we've helped hundreds of family farm operations go from chaos and disorganization when it comes to the finances in their operation to a place of confidence and clarity, so they're no longer shooting from the hip with every financial decision that they are making. If you want to learn more about how we are doing this and the proven process we've built with hundreds of customers over the past 5 years, go to legacyfarmer.com and get started today.
But for good reason, you have been doing company things and couldn't make it work. So how's it going, man?
Oh man, it's been a nightmare. Like I said, we've tried to set up this thing for like 3 times now. I've had to cancel because of just everything just fucking going crazy in the background. But this year, it's we're starting off the new year, so we might as well have a look at what happened in the last year. So, I think last time we talked, we were just building Topsy. Well, this year, we started off the year with having the truck finished. We went through all the programming, the testing. We got it certified by the government to be road legal, which is a huge step for something that we built in our backyard in a tent, to just an idea and a concept, going through all of the safety testing, the parts, the component testing, and getting it road legal to where we could start driving around. And we started with months of bobtail testing, running around with just a truck. We worked out a bunch of the kinks, a bunch of the faults in there, and just the compute, getting everything to work together. We started packing around some empty trailers, and then we were actually able to go do what we meant to do, and we hauled some loads of logs into the mill, did a bunch of mill transfers. We hauled 150,000 pounds with our truck, which is just insane. I think it's probably one of the most ever hauled in North America. We took it over. We showed it off to customers. We hauled our own stuff and our own parts around. We got to the point where we could use our own truck for hauling our own parts around. We took it over to Alberta. We pulled a low bed, and we were able to show it off to some customers. The customers liked it enough that they were willing to buy a truck up with cash up front. We're like, look, we don't have a lot of money. If we're going to grow this, we need to be able to ask cash up front. And we found businesses that were willing to buy our truck with cash up front. And we had enough demand that we're like, hey, look, we have no more space to take on any more trucks. We had a company say, not only will we buy a truck with cash, we can build it in our shop. Like, I'll dedicate our shop space, and you guys can come here and just build it in our spot. So, like, the support we've had from the trucking community, seeing it, has just been absolutely phenomenal. But turns out, building the actual truck is the easy part of doing this whole business. Shouldn't be, but it is.
So we interviewed you, Chace, and it went live at July 25th of 2022. So it's actually been 2.5 years ago. So it's been exciting to follow you on TikTok, to see the gains and how the business is built. But if our listeners are just learning about Edison Motors for the first time, can you give a high-level, quick overview of what you're doing to revolutionize the trucking industry?
Yeah, so a high-level overview with a little bit of background is that me and my buddy that helped co-found this business, Eric, we had a trucking company, and we were a bunch of loggers, low bedders, that sort of thing. And we looked at the advantage of electric semi-trucks, especially for logging. You're going uphill empty, you're coming downhill loaded. And the basic premise is, like, that sounds great, but battery alone, electric vehicles don't suck because of the electric motors. The electric motors are awesome. Super high torque, ability to regen. Batteries suck. So we looked at it and said, well, why don't we do it like a freight train where there's a diesel generator and then there's electric motors? And we started doing the math and looked at it, and basically we put in a battery system. We make it a hybrid. So we make the truck run completely off the battery so that we can capture the regen. So every time you slow down, you recapture that energy used to slow the vehicle down and use that energy to accelerate. So the generator makes the base load. So if you look at the base load is basically, you look at a normal semi-truck, you run 600 horsepower. That's about what the average semi has up here in Canada for logging. And you need that 600 horsepower because if you weigh 140,000 pounds and you're trying to climb the mountain, that's a huge peak load. You're at a red light and you're trying to accelerate. You need all that power to get that mass moving and up to speed. But once you're up at speed, you're using very little power to just maintain that momentum. So you need 600 horsepower to start, but you only need about 200, 250 horsepower to keep it moving down the highway. But you're running a big motor, a 600 horsepower motor, when the majority of the time you only need 250. So what we were able to do was downsize that motor as the generator to about 350 horsepower. And then that generator maintains the average base load and the batteries maintain the peak load. So you can draw a ton of power, which means that we can pull 1,400 horsepower of those batteries. So you have just insane power to climb the hill or to get that vehicle moving from a stop. But then you're running a 9-liter generator, and instead of it lugging down every time, because it's really inefficient. A diesel motor to a mechanical transmission is inefficient. Because you're trying to build boost pressure. That gives you your proper fuel-air ratio. Well, every time you shift gears, so you bring up your RPM, you just hit your peak torque curve, which for most diesel motors is around 1,700 horsepower. That's your peak torque, and when you hit it, you shift gears, you drop your RPMs back down to a 1,200 RPM, and you lose your turbo boost, because for some of the listeners that don't know how a turbo works, is that a turbo generates power off of the exhaust. The exhaust comes rushing out of the engine, it spins a big fan, that big fan sucks in more air, but there's a turbo lag where you're burning more fuel while you take that air in. So every time you shift, you lose your boost, you burn overly rich. So when you see an old diesel that's blowing black smoke, it's because they're sending a ton of fuel to try and get that turbo spinning so they can suck in all that air. You just build the boost, and then you shift to the next gear, and you lose all that energy and effort. With a generator, you're just running at 1,700 RPM. You're staying at 40 pounds of boost consistently throughout the whole thing. No turbo lag, with the batteries just sending 1,400 horsepower to the wheels. That is how our truck works, and we've shown massive improvements in efficiency by going hybrid. It's honestly, it is awesome.
So you are calling it a hybrid, because that's not how hybrid cars work.
Yeah, there's difference between series and parallel hybrid, and now you got two where one is like a plug-in hybrid where it's a fully electric one, and it's a range extended hybrid where the generator fires up. And I think there are a few cars out there like that, and more people seem to be going to it because all the evidence shows that that's the way to go. The other way is you still have a transmission, but you have an electric motor doing some of the regen and then assisting that transmission, but then you still have all the issues of you've got the drive line and where you put the batteries if the drive shaft is running through the middle, and then every time you shift, you still lose it's just there's too much complexity. Just make it a goddamn generator and put the batteries in. That's the way we went. We were calling it diesel electric and then plug-in hybrid, or is it range extended? I don't know. It's like a freight train.
I just remember, you gave a really good example the first time we talked about what the hours some of these diesel generators have on them. You were talking about some that run in the Arctic, right? There's generators that have, hundreds of thousands of hours on these motors, but it's because it's a consistent load. And you look at the number of hours on a semi motor before you have to overhaul it. It just is such a vast comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen diesel motors that there's some people that have 100,000 hours on their diesel motor. Old 3406 cats just working as a generator, and they're talking to one of the person. They're like, yeah, we were going to change it when it needs a rebuild and put in a newer one, but it's been 30 years and the thing hasn't faulted on us. It's
Jeez.
Still surviving. Whereas you look at a truck, you're doing pretty good if you get to 25,000 hours. And that's just because diesel engines love running at one peak RPM. They love working hard. They love getting up to their power and just staying at their peak power. They're not such a fan of lugging down and throttling back up and going across the RPM band. It's healthier to just fire it up and let it run and sit there and eat all day.
Yeah. So in 2022, when we talked to you, this was more of just a vision. You guys you've done a lot of work at that time, but did you have the concept truck, Carl, at that time?
I can't remember if Carl was actually working at that point. So
I don't think it was. Nothing was moving in 22.
No, but
we got it
pretty big
at the
vision.
end of 2022. Summer of 2022 is when it started driving.
Yep. And you guys, like you said, you're up in Canada. It's cold up there, and you were working in tents, like tent shops. Still are. Yeah.
Yeah, we still are. It's cold as fuck.
It's crazy because you can't row crop farm here in Iowa without having a heated shop. And they're not building no semis. It's nuts.
I mean, we got some damn tough mechanics that are out there at 10 below, 15 below in a tent, and they got a little diesel heater by their feet trying to keep warm, and like we're out there with them, and it's rough. We've been trying to find a shop for a long time now.
Man. So before we get into the shop conversation, because I feel like that's going to go a little ways, you've had a couple funding calls walk us through the reason for that, your visions with it, challenges you've had, things like that.
So yeah, we raised a bit of money at the start when it was just an idea. We raised about $400,000, and that was enough to build our proof of concept, which was Carl. It had an old 3306 Cat. It had some batteries out of a Tesla. It had a Tesla motor that we welded the spider gears up and ran a drive shaft to. It was crude, but it worked. And it had some issues in that we used Tesla programming. So it was a Tesla motor control unit. We can't use Tesla programming when we go to production. And we got a generator that's working independently. So as a driver, I've got to control everything and monitor the batteries and fire it up manually. Because we can't hack into the Tesla things and rewrite everything. But it proved we could build an electric truck. That was our goal. We did it. The concept worked. So we went out and we raised $1.5 million with crowdfunding. And that allowed us to take that idea, take what we learned from Carl, and build the next truck that we could name Topsy. It was named Topsy after the elephant that Thomas Edison electrocuted. That's why it's got a big elephant on the side as the hood logo. But yeah, I mean, it's all awesome. We didn't take Tesla parts. We found manufacturers that had each part. We sourced those parts, and we did all of our own programming to get all the parts to work together, which honestly, building the truck took about 3 months. Getting everything to work nicely together the way it should took 6 to 8 months. It took over twice as long as it did to actually build the truck, just to get the truck kinks starting to work out of it. And yeah, that's and we did a lot. If you think about what we did for $400,000 to build a proof of concept, fantastic. But then to build a working prototype for $1.5 million, it sounds like a lot of money, $1.5 million, and it is. But you look at all these other companies, and they're spending over $1 billion to develop their electric trucks. You got the case of Nikola, multiple billions of dollars to design and build what we built in a tent shop for just $1 million, a thousandth of the price that these other companies are spending. A bunch of loggers were able to do out of my parents' backyard in a tent. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people are forgetting nowadays, is that some of the most impressive companies were started by people that just knew their product. You look at John Deere, that was started by a guy that thought, well, I can make a better plow because I know plows and I know what farmers need. You look at Holt, he started Caterpillar because he needed a better tractor that wouldn't get stuck. So he developed the track system. You look at Peterbilt, wanted a better logging truck. All these companies were started by people that knew their product, knew what needed to be done, and innovated on it. And we knew trucks, owning trucks, rebuilding trucks. We knew every nut and bolt. We knew what works. We know what doesn't work. Because being loggers, if it can be broken, we've broken it. So we were able to take that industry knowledge, and we knew the trucks, and we approached it from knowing the trucks, and we learned the EV side. We had a bunch of people that came in as consultants and helped out on the EV side, whereas every other electric semi-truck company has all been started by people that knew the EV side and thought they would learn the trucks. But then you see issues like parking brakes suddenly failing and release. Tesla, I think, had that recall, if I'm not mistaken, but their parking brakes were failing. They were just releasing. Well, any mechanic would know that you got a 30-30 brake pot. It's been the same goddamn brake pot since 1955. It's been standard as a 30-30 brake pot, where a spring, when you lose your air pressure, a spring comes on, and you got a red button and a yellow button in the dash, and you hit those two buttons, and if your brakes fail, the parking brakes lock on. I don't know why they decided they needed to reinvent the entire wheel when it's already been established for over 60 years. So we didn't do that. Turns out, if you just approach things with a little bit of common sense and you develop it right, you don't need to spend $1 billion. And I think we proved that.
And now you're in the process, though, of a third round of funding, right?
That's right. Yeah, we wanted to launch it a little bit sooner because, we're still in the tent. We're doing things very, very frugally. We're working in a tent with no heating, no insulation. I'm still living in my parents' house in their basement, so I don't have to pay rent. just to save all that money we can save. And like, we are skimping to get by, but we were able to launch a new funding raise after all the headache that's involved in that. They needed audited financial statements that we could post on the website, but then we got the audited financial statements after spending like $30,000, $40,000, and they said, ooh, those aren't the right audited financial statements. See, you need this audited financial statement, IFRS or whatever. It's the same information, it's just laid out differently. Then you go to that accountant and be like, hey, can you reformat? And they say, no, I'm not qualified to do that. You need to find an accountant that's certified in IFRS statements. So you have to have another accountant then do it because I don't do IFRS. We go to that one. That accountant did it. We spent another $30,000 and we're like, oh, we got the IFRS. And we go into the SEC and they're like, oh, sorry, for the US one, you need GAAP financial statements, which is a different for. It's all the same goddamn information. I'm sorry, but like what? If an investor doesn't want to invest in us because the formatting on the financial statement is different, don't let them invest. I don't know why that needs to be, why that can't just be, hey,
can it just be a box to check on the form? Just a box to check that says, I'm okay with the way these financials are reported.
Yeah, you would think that's it. But in order to even put it out there and be able to sell the shares, it had to be that way. And then we said, oh, well, let's do the GAAP then. We'll spend another $30,000 to get the second one done. Went to go do that, and they said, oh, sorry, you missed the deadline by a couple weeks. So because it's now, because we're now past the second quarter, you now need to wait until January to start reapplying because you need to put this full year's in, and then that takes 3-4 months to go through, and like, the fuck? So you don't do the right one, you got to do both of them, and then like there's nothing clearly laid out, and we're learning very fast that this entire investment thing is just so people that really know about investment are the only ones who can raise money for their businesses. So now it's starting to make a lot more sense. You look at these companies like Nikola, oh, they're brilliant at raising money, but they can't build a truck profitably to save their own lives. They couldn't even design their own cab. They had to use Iveco. They had massive faults. They rushed things. They were great at raising money, but they sucked at building trucks. Because turns out the only companies that are able to raise money are the ones that are raising money. And if you have a guy in a suit who experts in raising money, he probably isn't an expert in raising trucks. But now we have a disconnect in North America where people that are really good and have a good knowledge about building a product, know their product, and can do it, aren't the same people that can raise the money because there's so much goddamn regulation involved in raising money that the people that actually know what they're doing can't figure out, because you can't be good at everything. So yeah, I think we are missing out. I've discovered that we're missing out on a lot of great opportunities and a lot of great businesses that could be started, could be funded, but just aren't getting off the ground because the people that start them aren't people that can sell to investors and figure out all this regulation and bullshit going on. And it's actually really painful because with our following on social media, we can talk about things and the word gets out. But there are hundreds of other people that I have met and interacted with, whether they're farmers, loggers, truck drivers that have a great idea for a business. They have innovative ideas that could really make a difference, but they can't raise money and they struggle through all of this. And it's because of this over-regulation. And I got to even question, why does this regulation exist? You guys are all grown men who've made your own money, and you can probably decide whether something is risky or you want to take the risk. But the government is saying, no, you can't invest. Like for now, we got this new thing under the US. They came back and said, you did your lawyer filled out this form as 506C, not 506B. So these are lawyers that we hired because they just specialize in investment raising law. So they specialize in this, and they still made a bunch of mistakes because of how complicated these regulations are. So people that study this their entire lives, went to school for it, and are partners in a multi-million-dollar law firm, still made mistakes because of how complicated it is. And now they're saying because of that form, people have to show that they make over $200,000 a year, have a net worth of over $1 million and have to submit in the U.S. Canadians and international don't. But Americans, the American government is making Americans submit their tax returns to prove that they made $200,000 because they're trying to say that, and this is what they said, well, people that are less wealthy may not be qualified to assess the risk for themselves. And we don't want anybody risking their own money that they might lose. So it's to protect people that aren't as wealthy. So we think that only the wealthy people are smart enough to determine their own investment. So because you didn't do all of these steps right and you didn't have the GAAP financial forms, it's a riskier investment class. Therefore, only the wealthy are able to invest in it because they're smarter than the average person when it comes to spending their own money. And I said, if that, and this is, it got me in more shit, but because I keep speaking my mouth, right? But if that's the case, if you're really worried about protecting the average person's money, then why the isn't there a risk disclosure when I go into a casino in Vegas?
Yeah. Sure.
When I go to a casino, there's no forms or risk disclosure that says, hey, by entering into this casino, you may lose all the money you're gambling. Are you okay with the risk? And then the casino goes to these people gambling and says, hey, we just need to see your tax returns to see how much money you made, and we're going to decide how much money you can gamble based on your income that you earned, so that make sure it doesn't put your family in a financial hardship. Did they do that? They'll come over and they'll serve you drinks so that your decision-making thing is less influenced. Somehow that's legal, but you can't allow the average person to invest in a business that they've been following along for years and believe in. No, that is not to protect the average person. That is just a way that overabundance and regulation to make sure that the rich stay rich. We only want the rich people to invest in startups because, well, if everyone did it, some other poor people may join the richer class, and we can't have that. We can't have people making money off of investment. Poor people go to the casinos, they play the lottery, they buy Bitcoin, that's all okay, but damn well don't invest in your buddy's startup business. We don't want to see competition. We don't want to see more businesses getting off the ground unless those businesses are funded and operated by rich people that know the investment market, and I'm tired of it. It's been a year and a half we've been dealing with this bullshit.
Yeah. So are you going to have to go that route, or are you going to go and file the 506B or whatever it is to make it?
Here's the problem. Because we already filed the 506C, we can't go back and redo it as a 506B. They're like, well, you've already done the things and so it has to be this way. Like, fuck. It's just, it is a load of horse shit.
So we didn't get our investment back. So you must be making over $1 million a year.
I haven't been asked to turn my tax returns in yet.
Might want to check your junk mail. We just sent that email out a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago. They finally got back to us to say that. It might be from Eric Little in the thing. You either need a tax return or you need an accountant to sign a form that says. It's either from Dealmaker or from Eric Lill.
All right.
We had to do such a massive, because of the mistakes those lawyers made, we had to do so much extra work. I've spent the last 2 months just dealing with lawyers, and Eric has been working nonstop in this. And it's just like, they're worried, and they're like, we got to protect the interest of investors. Well, you guys are investors. What's in your best interest as an investor? Having me work on the trucks and the business and tracking all this, or spending thousands and thousands of dollars of your money dealing with lawyers and spending months of my time to do it? What's in the best interest for you guys as investors?
Yeah, absolutely backwards.
Yep. Kind of like when banks incentivize, or the USDA incentivizes you to pay off your cheapest interest first.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just anything government-wise, it just doesn't make sense.
So I do want to kind of talk about your competition. And when we talked to you the first time, one of the biggest things that you were having a lot of fun with is you thought trucks should look cool. Yeah. And they should be cool. Just if they included cool technology, they should also look the part too. Is that still true?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think trucks should look cool. And this is one of those things that I find really, really funny. And maybe it's just because these people don't know trucks. But Tesla, I think was so innovative because they made the first sexy electric cars. They retrofitted a bunch of, what were they, Lotuses, and then they came out with a Model S, where people are like, wow, that's a good-looking car. Before then, electric vehicles were a Toyota Prius, or they looked like vaginas on wheels, for lack of a better word. Like, electric cars were not cool. Tesla came out and they're like, we made an electric car that looks awesome. And people are like, yes, a sexy electric car. I'm willing to get that. But then they came into the semi-truck market and they're like, hey, we're doing a semi-truck. And every truck driver I talked to had about the same opinion. That thing is ugly. That is the Toyota Prius of semi-trucks. Why didn't you build a cool-looking electric truck? No trucker got excited about the Tesla Semi. Not one of them. Like, you guys didn't follow their own business model of make something that looks awesome, that people want to own, that they want to drive, that also has the benefits that you're trying to do. And maybe it's just the fact that I am a trucker. My entire passion's been truckers. I'm a fourth generation of a trucker. My granddad, my great-granddad, all were truck drivers. So that history is rooted deeply. And I don't know, I just built the truck that I like the design of, and then a lot of other people came out and said they like the design of.
So does Tesla or any other company have any working trucks on the road right now?
Yep, Tesla's got some working trucks on the road. Peterbilt's got theirs out. Volvo's got a good electric truck. Cascadia's got a decent electric truck. And we've had a look at them. We've driven them. They're all good electric trucks. They work well. They do the job. They're just only batteries, so you only get about 4 to 5 hours of work out of them. And one of the issues is like they did a study with a company that actually ended up buying a truck from us. But they came out with an electric semi-truck made by one of the big companies, and they put it on their haul. And the semi-truck wasn't rated to haul super B weights. They move 150,000 pounds, and that truck was only rated for like 80,000 pounds, 90,000 pounds, which means that their payload was half of what they normally would haul because the truck wasn't rated for it. They were lighter axles, all that sort of thing. And they could only get about 4 hours out of that electric truck, but they need to do a 10, 12-hour day. So they can only work half a day, and they can only pack half the weight. So they said, to go with these electric trucks, I would have to buy 4 of them. So they got up there at the end of this thing, and then they announced that, so we are pleased to announce that we are buying a truck from Edison Motors. They had to look at our truck, the generator, the fact that it can keep doing its job, had all the advantage of electric, but with the advantage of you don't need to buy 4 trucks to do the same job as one. So they are good electric trucks, but there's not a sexy one. I don't know of any other manufacturer that made a nice looking electric truck. And here's a funny thing, little side story. So we were doing retrofits when we started, just retrofitting a bunch of other ones. And then we found out that, you know what, it's probably just easier we can just build our own. That's kind of cool. And the incentives only apply to new builds. Like the government gives you a big rebate on a new build that they don't give you on a retrofit. So it was actually cheaper for our customers to buy new than it was to retrofit. But anyways, notwithstanding, when we were doing the retrofits, a guy really wanted a retrofitted Peterbilt. 389 long-nose Peterbilt, just done up as a hybrid. But talked with Peterbilt and their rep there, and the guy we talked to, and we were like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's approach head Peterbilt about this. He's a salesman. He's on board with that customer. The customer is on board with it. They're like, hey, can we do a long-nosed Peterbilt up? Peterbilt's like, no, that's not what we're doing it's got to be the slope-nosed aerodynamic model. We don't want the image of long-nosed Peterbilt with big exhaust pipes associated with a clean transition. It was all about the image. It's got to be this aerodynamic truck. We can't do a long-nosed Peterbilt because that doesn't have the marketing we want. Well, just why not? They're the same body. All they do is change the hood. Let the guy have what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants a long nose, give him a long nose. Why is Peterbilt trying to tell the customer what the customer wants instead of the customer telling Peterbilt what they want?
Right. That's Whatever. Right. So you're designing them to look cool, but do they still sound cool? Are you ready to power through your harvest? Meet the Maya corn heads. They're designed for maximum efficiency and unmatched durability in the toughest of conditions.
With precision engineering and advanced features, Maya corn heads ensures every kernel counts, giving you the performance and reliability that you need. Get more from your harvest with equipment built to last.
Reach out to your local Maya corn heads dealer or visit mayacornheads.com to find your perfect match today. Maya corn heads, harvest with confidence.
Yeah. Oh. So this is one of my favorite things. We partnered up with Scania, big truck manufacturer out of Europe. And we asked if we went over there, we checked their trucks out and looked at their motors. And I talked to some owner operators and some fleets and about their reliability. They love the reliability of those Scania motors. And then with the more we learned, the Scanias can meet Tier 4 final emissions without requiring a DPF. No particulate filter. That's the biggest issue, is that filter plugs up, or you don't run hot enough and it needs to burn and needs to regen. Yep. There's no regen, there's no burning, there's no clogged filters with a Scania motor. And because there's no filter, that's basically your muffler. So you can run a set of straight pipes and still meet Tier 4 final emissions. So they make a beautiful V8. It's way more horsepower than we ever need as a generator, but god damn, you could put a V8 in there with 550 kilowatts for like a heavy haul application, and you could just run a straight pipe V8. Like, oh.
I knew he'd have a good answer.
Oh, yeah.
He is. He's a truck driver.
Yeah. Have you ever been approached by your competition to either be bought or possibly, you run their program?
The closest we got was Peterbilt there, but no, we really haven't. I've got no real interest in being bought out. And I've been made that very, very clear when they start the process of talking that I hate it every time they buy out a Canadian truck manufacturer. Is that you look at BC and Canada, we had some of the best built trucks in North America. You look at Canadian Kenworth, was separate than Kenworth, built amazing logging trucks right out of here in Vancouver, BC. They got acquired and just rolled into Kenworth, shipped the plant down south. You look at Western Star. Western Star was known as some of the toughest trucks on the road. What did they do? They bought out Western Star. Daimler Freightliner bought out Western Star, shipped the plant down south to Mexico, and now the new Freightliners are just glorified Cascadias. They're the Cascadia cab, Cascadia dash, and with just a Western Star hood logo and a couple other little minor changes. Well, the quality, talking to guys that have bought them, and they're telling me that they don't like the quality compared to what it was 20 years ago. You look at Hayes. Hayes was a great truck manufacturer. They got bought out by PACCAR, and a few months later, they just shut the whole factory down. They bought out their competition. They just shut the competition down. Same thing happened. International bought Pacific, shut Pacific down overnight. Or within a couple of years, I think, with Pacific. But they get bought out, and then they get shut down, and they get shelved. Well, fuck it. I don't want to do that. I don't want Edison to be shelved on a thing. It's that we've got core fundamental principles. We fight planned obsolescence, and we fight for right to repair. I want a truck that a person can actually fix themselves without having to go into a dealership. I want a truck that's built well, built with quality, and meant to last. These are heavy vocational trucks where people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to upfit them and rig them up. Don't make shit quality trucks that you have to be thrown out in 4 years. So that is our core principle. And that's why I'm not willing to sell that out, because I think somebody else would any other investor or large company would be opposed to that.
I like that sound. I mean, I can't wait to apparently go submit my tax returns and get our funding in there. But ultimately, let's grow it, do it, run it, be the industry leader, have everybody else try to follow and mimic. And if you get to a point, then you acquire and do it the right way. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, wouldn't that be the goal? We get to the point where, because honestly, like you look at a company like Tesla that built the cars, they got $1 trillion valuation. They just on the car they built, how they were leaders in the industry. They got that, man, if I had that $1 trillion valuation, you know what I'd do? I'd buy out all the other truck manufacturers and make them fix their shit. Like, that would be the ideal goal. Just reverse Uno them.
reversing it. I was going to look up what Tesla's stock price is right today. It's been doing pretty good. 421 right now. It's back down. It was over 460. You guys ever going to be publicly traded, you think? Is that the goal?
I think we're required to, and not an IPO, but a direct listing. If we raise the $20 million that we're hoping for, really we're hoping for 10, but our big goal is 20. We're covered for the next few years, but the U.S. has rules and regulations that once you have over $10 million in assets and you have over 2,000 investors, you have to be listed. Or you have to file a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of other paperwork that's basically you might as well list at that point.
Okay.
But that would be where, so we have, once we hit that, we have a full year to start the paperwork to be listing and probably listed in a year or two, hopefully. And then the investors that come in now, that would be where they could either decide to hold the shares or sell the shares or sell part of the shares to recover their initial investment or hopefully if the shares are doing better. But yeah, we probably won't do an IPO. I don't think we'll need to sell more shares, but we'll have to be listed, I think. I'm still figuring out all how that works. Question for Eric. He's been the main one talking to the lawyers.
Can you imagine 3 years ago thinking you'd actually have to know this stuff and have to understand it? I know there's positions at Farm4Profit where we're like, I never would have guessed we'd have to know this or be an expert in that.
Yeah, I wish I was more of an expert in financing and investing than I was. It would sure make life a lot easier, but why? I'm still opposed to the fact that why are the rules so complicated that you need to be an expert in all this stuff? And you can't even get an answer out of the... One thing that's super annoying is that we have to hire lawyers who debate back and forth multiple times of, is this rule okay? Like there was a rule for friends and family that caused an issue. And it said a friend is considered a friend if they know you well enough and for a long enough period of time that they are able to assess the investment, get regular updates about the business, be able to assess your trustworthiness, your ability to deliver, and they can make a rational assumption on, is that something that they can do?
That's
well,
us.
We said if somebody's been following on social media, they can meet those definitions, and we'll put up a little check mark. And then they said, well, okay, if they meet that definition, then that sounds all right. And the lawyers initially let us raise money with that, and they said, yeah, no, that makes sense. And then they came back. 1 second. They came back and said, well, hold on, maybe not. Maybe the SEC, like you had 300, 400 people sign up under friends. Like that's abnormal. It says on the government website that you're allowed to raise an unlimited amount from an unlimited amount of people as long as they're considered a friend. And they meet that definition. And the lawyers couldn't find a single reason why we couldn't meet that definition. But then they were worried about the SEC because they're like, normally it's only like 20 to 30 people and you have 300-400. They may find that suspicious and they may not like it. And they're back and forth. And I kept saying, like, why can't we just go to the SEC, the BCSC, and just say, hey, look, this is our interpretation. What is the way that you guys feel? But the government won't let you do that. And they basically say, hey, you've got to launch the raise and then submit it to us, and we'll tell you whether you're in shit or not. So, like, it's up to your lawyers, and your lawyers have to decide. And the lawyers are like, so the only way is, like, that's like making the speed limit a question like 120, and you'd be like, ooh, but we really wanted you to do like 70 or 80, not 120. But we're not going to tell you what the actual speed limit is. You got to kind of guess that. But if you guess too high, we're going to fine you.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. I do want to bring up the, like you said, electric vehicles, the Prius. Corey had sent me about 4 or 5 months ago the new Ram Charger. I drive a Ram pickup. Dave drives a Ford pickup. Corey drives a GMC pickup.
And the reason I saw that was because Chace said something about it.
Yes, because then I looked back at what you talked about, and I'm pretty sure if I can save up enough pennies that I want the Ram version of what you're building, because it is. I just got it pulled up here. It's a 92 kilowatt hour battery pack with a 130 kilowatt generator that's powered by a 3.6 liter Pentastar V6 engine that does what you guys do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's funny because we were working on our pickup version of that, and then they came out with their new version, which is kind of cool. I think it makes sense. It's cool to see that we led the way in this generator with batteries, and now you see other OEMs coming into it. And it's honestly, part of that is such a nice validation. Is like, we're working on developing the first few pickup trucks, and we're like, well, I hope that our math was right on that, being like 150 kilowatt hour motor. And we were like, well, we think we need 100 kilowatt. And then these big companies came out and they're like, nope, that's what it needs to be. And we're like, oh, our math worked. The big company probably had way more engineers working on this than we did.
I don't like it says, I don't like it says it comes with a one pedal driving mode. That would make me nervous. But like you're talking about, you take your foot off the gas and it's going to brake itself and regen.
Well, most truck drivers so many people don't know anything about electric vehicles or about actual diesel trucks, because you get a lot and be like, oh man, I bet that'd be interesting to get the truck drivers used to one pedal driving, because you just lift off the pedal and it slows you down. That's an engine brake. That's been on trucks for the last 80 years. You let off the pedal and the engine brake starts slowing your truck down and you start downshifting your gears. And new trucks come with exhaust brakes. Like the new Dodge with the Cummins, they have the exhaust brake on. You let off the throttle, the exhaust brake starts slowing you down. That's the exact same as regen. Truck drivers have already been one pedal driving forever. Like that's pretty standard. It's just now the regen is way stronger than a Jake brake or a exhaust brake. So it just slows you down a little bit quicker.
What happens if you have to stop fast?
Well, I'm sure there is an actual brake pedal.
Okay.
It just says there's a one pedal driving mode. Yeah.
Which is normal anyway, right? Like we're just saying for truckers. So
you, instead of stopping in a quarter mile, it probably
you say
stop you in
one pedal drive mode made it seem like there was just one pedal.
Oh, no. Nope. It does say
wildly insane. Yeah, no, there is still two pedals.
Yeah. It says a 700-mile range. So that's that'd be handy.
That would be handy. How is your guys' pickup conversions coming?
Oh, pretty good. We're working on developing realize that a lot of these pickups are not as simple as semi-trucks, in that every manufacturer wants to use their own different axles, different things. And they're like, well, they all have the same though, with an axle tube, with all the hangers and everything on it. So rather than we can do the axles on the F450s, 550s, the Dodge 5500s. They normally seem to all use a Dana S110 axle. Perfect. That's an easy axle swap on the heavier pickups. On the smaller ones, Rich from DeBoss Garage has been working on a center section, and we redesigned it. We had it engineered, machined out, and you have the electric motor that attaches to it, and then you just plug in your axle tubes onto each end, weld those axle tubes on, then you can take your Dodge axle tubes, Ford axle tubes, shove it into the middle, weld her up, and put her in. So that's where we're at on this one. We got 5 pickup trucks that are being built right now as test bench units, and it's funny, they're almost a version behind now, is that we built it off of what we did for Topsy, and then we learned a lot in the testing in Topsy, but we had already ordered the parts for the pickup truck, and now we're changing some of them, so it's like a version 1.5. It's a little bit advanced from Topsy based on some of the things we learned, but it doesn't have some of the other things we learned. So we're just going to continue that, build these next 5 trucks, and then we're going to start training up the installers with version 2.0 on the next one, and just keep making improvements as we go.
What do you think is some of the biggest aha moments, or something you didn't see going the way it would from your beginning visions?
One of the things that we had to change for that was battery charging. And this should have seemed obvious, but we missed it in hindsight, is that we learned a lot about C rating on batteries. So we went with lithium iron batteries, which have about a 2C rating for the charging, which allows 2 times the state of charge. So if you have a 200 kilowatt hour battery, you can pump 400 kilowatts in there. But if I'm pumping out 300 kilowatts with a generator and then I try to regen, it over voltages the battery, and the 3-in-1 has issues, and it seems to send the power somewhere, and it dumped the power into the 3-in-1, which would overload the 3-in-1 and blow that up. So if I was running the generator and the regen, so I have to shut the regen off, shut the generator off, then apply the throttle, and you let off. So what we did is we found manganese batteries, which are newer. They're way still more stable than lithium-ion batteries. For thermal runaway, they're not prone to that, but they allow up to 10 C. So now if we have a 200 kilowatt-hour battery pack, we can dump 10 times that amount. So megawatts of power into them batteries, and they can take that shock load, and then we put in a little resistive load bank. So that was one of the things we found out, and that's one of the faults on Top C that we're like, oh, C rating. The batteries can only charge so fast, so much, and the generator's running, and you regen, and we really can't control the ramp down on the generator quick enough to get the regen on because it takes 5 seconds to come down, and waiting on to slow down for 5 seconds isn't viable. So that was one of those cool things. And,
okay. Yeah, it would be hard to wait 5 seconds to slow down.
Yeah. In 5 seconds, you can start.
I guess one of the other cool moments that happened since we last talked was we set out to build logging trucks because I thought that's the perfect application. Uphill empty, downhill loaded, and regen the whole way. Perfect application. We'll make logging trucks. And then we started showing what we were doing online, and all of these other companies started reaching out to us saying like, hey, I want it for this reason. I work in a city. Like, you start looking at applications, like I'll use a concrete truck, for example. They got to go into a residential area and unload, and they want to keep their pour going 24/7. But cities have noise bylaws that won't let them run a diesel engine between, say, 9 p.m. at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. You can't run a large diesel motor on a construction site due to the noise. Well, they can shut that truck off, the motor off, cruise in on electric, unload on electric, leave the residential area on electric, and fire that generator on the highway on their way back to the batching plant to recharge to go next time. So they weren't even concerned with the fuel economy. They were concerned with the noise reduction, because now instead of being able to run a truck for 14 hours a day, they can cross shift that truck and run that truck for 24 hours a day, which is essentially one truck does the job of 2 trucks. So that was a huge major benefit that we hadn't even clued in on. And then we started looking in the amount of people that just wanted trucks because they wanted them to run quietly on site. Well, you're looking at crane trucks. Well, you're running a 15-liter engine to run a hydraulic pump for a picker truck to sit there on site, and it's just holding something, it's barely moving all day. It swings over, it goes up and down, but everybody working on the site has to talk over this 15-liter diesel that's sitting there idling and revved up. And well, what if we were all quiet? And you could talk to the operator could talk to his riggers on the ground, and they could all communicate. Everyone can hear what's going on. And it was a safety and a convenience aspect above the fuel economy. So it was kind of cool. One of the biggest aha moments. We just thought, it makes sense fuel-wise, power-wise, reliability route-wise. And then they're like, no, there's all these other benefits you guys haven't even considered yet. So that was cool.
Next, I know, Corey, you wanted 1 or 2 or 5 of them to haul grain.
Yeah, just grain hauling. I mean, vocational, short distances, a lot of starts and stops. You know, it made a lot of sense to me. We were never going over the road. You know, our longest haul is 40 miles or so, but like harvest and things of that nature, a lot of them are within 5 miles, but you hit a stop sign every mile.
A lot of braking.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I mean, that's a great thing. When every mile you hit a stop sign, you slow down, you regen. Like, what we found in our testing is that our trucks don't make sense for being on the highway. Highway trucks tend to have like 450 horsepower motors. They're a motor that's downsized. They take a little longer to accelerate, but they get good fuel mileage. And you can gear it where that truck gets up to 60 mile an hour, and it stays at 60 mile an hour for 2-3 hours traveling across flat ground. Well, you don't get the advantage of the peak load demand. You don't get advantage of the regen. And a truck that's just running at 1 RPM, geared correctly with the right rear ends and the right transmission, it's a wash between our system by the time the mechanical losses kind of balance out to the electrical losses of transferring it over. So there's no net benefit for the highway. But if you are constantly slowing down and starting and going uphill and downhill, now you really see the benefits. It's all about how much is your peak load above and below your average load. Because what a generator does is it smooths out all those peaks and valleys into one base load. So if you're peaks and valleys are very close to your base load and you have very few peaks or valleys, there's less benefit than when you have tons of peaks and valleys.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
If you had your perfect trajectory and we were looking at Edison Motors in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what's that look like?
Well, I'd love to be a big OEM. I mean, one of the things that it's above what we viewed when we started out, way above. But the amount of interest, I get about 4 to 5 emails a day, up to sometimes 10, 20 emails in some days, depending on if we posted a video or not, it seems to be. But companies reaching out asking if they can buy a truck. And that's thousands of trucks that people are interested in. And this is at the prototype stage where we built one. And there's still that level of demand for trucks. So I would love to grow up to meet that demand, because I think that there should be trucks that are well built with right to repair in mind, that save operators fuel to get out there. So now we're trying to be like, how do we meet that? How do we get to production? How do we take that next step? I would love, there's like, if you look at just heavy vocational, there's like 40,000, 50,000 heavy vocational trucks out on the road for the heavy, and they build thousands and thousands of 50,000 a year rolling out of the assembly line. I would love to be able to get to even 10% of that and be able to do 5,000 trucks per year. Like, we're now seeing that this is above and beyond where we started. This is a product that people really, really want. It's a product that saves money on fuel. It's a product that the industry, I think, needs with the way it's built. We need to go back to some of that right to repair stuff. And I think we can make a difference. So I want to scale this. I want to grow this to meet the demand that's out there, because I don't think the bigger OEMs are going to.
I know I got one question that's going to poke the bear, but I don't want to poke the bear until we're ready to send him out on a rant.
Oh, gotcha.
You got more questions, or you wrapped up?
Is the podcast still a thing?
No, I got so busy with Edison that the podcast kind of fell aside.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the personal question. You said you're still living in your parents' basement, but a year or two ago you got engaged, right? Didn't you?
Unfortunately that fell through.
That fell through?
Yeah, it
because you were living in your parents' basement?
That honestly did factor into a lot. After I think 3 years of living in my parents' basement, she was very tired of that, and I'll be honest, a lot of it was my fault. I spent way too much time at work with the business. Edison Motors had taken over our lives, and it went from she was with me when I was driving logging truck and planning to buy a house and get going, and okay, we'll buy a house. We got a good income. Well, but after 3 years of living in my parents' basement, and I used to have weekends off. I was free in the evenings. I'd drive my truck Monday to Friday. I'd get home at 4:00 in the afternoon. I'd have my evening free. Weekends we would do things, and this turned into a 24/7 job. So I can't blame her for saying that I don't know how long I can stick around for. And what it is.
Sorry to bring up painful.
Oh no, it's one of those things that happens when you start a business. Like, I'm passionate. I'm glad I did Edison Motors, and it was just one of those things where, do I do Edison Motors or go back to logging? And I decided Edison Motors was worth it.
Well, sounds like maybe you need a woman that likes Edison Motors as much as you do, and then you guys can just work together.
Never work with your spouse. Yeah. You got a great partner in Eric for a business partner, but
I mean, Corey's close enough to a wife, and it's still hard to work with him. So
Jesus. That's all I got, Tanner.
That's good.
Poke the bear.
Well, I know that the fundraising is a sour point, but you're also struggling, and you wanted to share a message that other small businesses are working with, and some of that continues down that over-regulation track. Part of what you wanted to do at this fundraising was get out of the tent, right?
Yeah. That was one of the big ones, get out of the tent. And we started that process actually last year. And we started looking around, and the city reached out to us up in Terrace, BC, And we're like, well, I didn't really consider tariffs, but the economic development officer said, hey, I've been following you. Why don't you consider tariffs? There's this old shop. It used to be the old Hayes truck manufacturing shop where they did all the rig up and manufacturing for the HDXs for up north. Why don't you come up here? And they're like, I don't know, that's pretty. He's like, no, you got to see all the benefits. We got a major inland port with a rail reload yard. We're close to the port for anything coming from overseas. And with the rail reload, you can just rail in your stuff. So we got a lot of our frame rails from the U.S. out of Pennsylvania, from PG Adams. We got steel suppliers out of the U.S. We got a lot of part suppliers that all come from back east where the manufacturing hubs are. We use a lot of North American-made parts. And the rail shipping, when we looked into it, can knock the price down by 10. They're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Really sold us on it. And their sawmill had closed down. So they needed the jobs. They had an available workforce due to the mill closure. We could come in there, move into the shop, 300 people laid off. We could maybe hire 30, 40 of those people back. We go in there and we go have a look at the shop. Man, it's great. It even has an overhead crane space that we can put in. It's got the offices for the engineering staff. It's all set up for truck production. We're like it's wide, but it's really long. So it's perfect for an assembly line. That's what it was made for. Well, we approach the city and we say, hey, is there going to be any issue with the building permits? And the economics guy said, well, we'll look into it. And they said, oh, there's an issue. Under the current zoning rules, you can repair semi-trucks, you can sell semi-trucks, but there may be an issue with manufacturing the semi-trucks. I don't know personally what the difference between repairing semi-trucks and building semi-trucks is. It's basically the same kind of work and noise. Anyways, and he said, well, we got to go talk to the city planner and see if they're willing to allow an amendment, because they can do an amendment to allow that. And the city planner said, well, manufacturing semi-trucks doesn't fit our vision that we have for the city. That lot is zoned commercial. So like we could see it as like a dealership that like sells cars or repairs cars, or like a coffee shop would fall under commercial, or highway services. We don't know about manufacturing. We're like, what do you mean? It was a manufacturing shop. There was a sawmill across the street that closed down that was industrial. And they're like, well, yeah, but that sawmill closed down. So maybe somebody will want to do like a residential thing or some other commercial thing in there. And then maybe we don't want to keep this as an industrial hub anymore. But we have all this bare land that you can have. We built a whole new industrial site out by the airport. It's only $200,000 an acre. Okay, that's bare land. Like that's back to us being in a tent shop working out in the cold. And like, well, we may, they're like, well, like that could be a great area to expand. And I said, well, that's definitely true. There's 1,200 acres there. It's a great area to expand in. I'm sure we may outgrow. If we want to hit our vision where we want to build a couple thousand trucks a year, we'll probably outgrow this shop. And they said, well, we're not willing to give you a permanent thing. And well, we said, can we get permanent? They really heavily dissuaded us. They're like, oh, well, that can take a long, long time, years and multiple meetings. You probably have to hire a consultant to do the zoning change, and there's multiple meetings, and you got to put posts in the newspaper, and this whole thing can take upwards of a year of getting a permanent amendment. Why don't you apply for a 3-year amendment? We said that probably isn't going to fly with our investor. At the time, we had an investor lined up that said, hey, I'll buy a shop in exchange for equity, give you the shop, and you guys can get going. Love what you're doing. We're like, man, they're only willing to give us 3 years. Like the city said that, they sent that through, the city approved that, and they're like, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't to us either. Why would I take my employees that live here, at the time we were 8 of us, relocate those 8 guys and their families to a town that we're only willing to give us a 3-year permit? You're like, yes, maybe we'll outgrow it and it'll turn into a showroom and a dealership and it has great highway access. It'd be a great showroom. But what if, look at how much pain in the ass it's been on this permitting. This had already been going on for 4 months, 5 months, and you're giving us a timeline to build a new shop that we have to move into in 3 years. Well, I don't know where I'm going to be at for production in 3 years. I don't know what that shop's going to look like. Why the fuck would I start immediately investing in that time to build a new shop? Like, I don't want to move into a place where I've got this sword of Damocles hanging above my head, ready to come down in 3 years or shut down our production. I'm like, give us a permanent thing or we can't make it work. They're like, well, we really can't do a permanent thing. But like, what a bunch of horseshit. They wanted us up there in the city. They had just lost 300 jobs. They needed the jobs, but they put in so many regulations. Like, they wanted us to do a highway impact assessment. They were worried about our impact on the highway. How many trucks are going to be coming in and out, and how's that going to interfere with the highway? And that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was a sawmill across the street that had hundreds of logging trucks coming in every single day. We are not going to be impacting the highway more than the sawmill that shut down. That's a bullshit argument. And it's just... everything they did. They said they really wanted us there. They brought us up there. They spent months and months of our time. We had lined up. We'd reached out. We'd found the investor. And at the end of the day, they said, well, we're just not willing to have you move here permanently. Just do it 3 years. Well, I'm not going to spend $1 million on a shop to only be in it for 3 years.
Right.
Either you want us to move to your community or you don't. And they came out with a statement because I made the video, and then that came out, and they're like, we're not anti-business. We have done a zoning that goes beyond the community plan. They have a central community plan. That was the reason why they couldn't zone us, is that this one little fucking asshole up there said, I have a vision. They hired him on, and the planner said, I've got a vision, and I think this is going to be a highway thing, and it's going to change it, and I've got this big plan that I see for my city. Well, your plan, that building's been abandoned for 20 years, so clearly you're playing shit because businesses aren't supporting your plan. How about instead of you as a city planner trying to centrally craft something like you're the Soviet Union in the 1970s? Because guess what? Having one guy in the government centrally plan out what all these businesses are going to do is communism, and that failed in the Soviet Union. So that scrawny little needs to leave the government, let businesses say where the businesses want to be, because that's not working for them. But they said, oh, well, we're willing to go beyond the city plan for this person. We made an exception for an inland port. Yeah, for multi-billion-dollar companies, you can make an exception because they have the lobbying box and they can spend the 3 years it needs to the paperwork. But you know who can't spend 3 years fighting you as a city? The small businesses like us. I can't afford that time. What about other guys? Guys that want to open up a repair shop. We need mechanics. We need people to work on things. We need welding shops. We need fabricators. They're all small businesses that can't do the 3 years and hire consultants and lobbyists and all that to do it like these billion-dollar industries. You're not pro-business if the only business you're willing to accept are the ones that are willing to grease your goddamn palms. Let's let the small businesses get back in there, start building things, or we're kind of as a middle class, aren't we? Like, sorry, I don't know if I can use that language on your podcast. It's probably close to the end of it, but
I think it's great. I knew I'd get you fired up.
Vote. Chace, you got my vote.
You know what?
I don't know what you're running for, but you got my vote.
Why don't you move it down to Polk, right outside of Polk City?
Yeah.
Right outside of Slater, right outside of the studio.
Iowa.
We'll just set up Edison Motors US.
There you go.
Honestly, I would love to move to the U.S. And we had offers, and they told us, and some cities have reached out to us, and we brought up the zoning issue that we went through, and they said, hey, we'll guarantee you that any rezoning you need delivered within 3 days. You tell us the property, you tell us what you need, we'll have all of those things signed and done within 3 days. We had other places that said, hey, we got this industrial land, you can buy this land off of us for $1. And they had brilliant things that I thought were great for the economy, in that the city or the state would sell land to businesses for $1, but they had first right to buy it back for $1 if you stopped using it. So in other words, come in here, have this property for free, but as soon as you stop employing people, we take the land back and we give it to another business. The land isn't for your investment or to hold as an asset. It's for you to generate economic activity. Great. Whatever zoning you need, like no taxes for 5 years. Like, there's so many advantages. But the problem with moving to the States is there's so much bureaucracy on the immigration side. Now, these guys that we had employed, that we got 12 people, 15 people now that work for us full time, I can't just let them go. They helped start this company. They an essential part of it. They put their heart and soul into this business. What do? Tell them that, oh, our government regulations suck, so you guys are all laid off. I'm going to the States. I'd love to move them down there. We need to expand and grow to about 40 people and then just hire some local guys. But the paperwork for immigration and everything like that is such a nightmare that how do I bring those guys down to the States and move there? That costs. Now I got to hire immigration lawyers, all of that stuff. I got relocation fees. Like, the cost to move down to the States would cost millions. It's probably better in the long run. And if we could just go out, raise all the money we need, we can move the guys down there, I would. But the government is stopping us from raising the money. So I can't relocate to where I need to be. I can't stay where I am because of bureaucracy, and I can't relocate because of all the bureaucracy. Either way, I'm trapped in this bureaucracy that's not letting us grow and expand.
You fly down to Mexico, and then you just come up from the south. That's
So
how you
bad.
get around that.
I thought Trump was going to make Canada the 51st state anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that would honestly. Why don't we have something though like Europe does? Europe has that free work area. Canada and the US are very similar.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say, like, look, we've got similar economies, similar things, free work visas for people that want. If an American wants to come up to Canada and get a job here, let them. Our wages are about the same. They're a little bit lower now that we've had Trudeau, but on average, you're talking within $10,000. You're talking the difference between certain states and other states.
Yep.
But our wages are about the same. Our attitude, our values are about the same. We don't really have a lot of crime issue. Like it's like European nations. Why can't we just allow Americans to come up here and work and allow Americans to go down there? If a Canadian wants to start a business in the US, let him. If a US guy wants to see Canada and start a business up here, let him. It'd be great for both economies. And then we just strengthen up like the European Union does with common borders. Canada would probably need to tighten up its outside borders, but
I love it. We don't usually get into politics very much or government very much on our show, and I think this will be a good foray because it's the same thing happening to farmers right outside of city areas. There's a lot of our listeners that struggle with those that are concerned about, water and runoff, and it just a lot of things put in place without thinking about the true effects of what actually does happen. But Chace, this was fun. I know we took more of the time than what we'd planned on with you, but not realizing it was 2.5 years ago the last time that we chatted. I think we needed that much time, and maybe we needed some more.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on.
This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. I got out a couple rants that we've been working on to be able to do it. And also, thanks, guys, for investing with us and believing in us, too. I really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, I may have to go doctor up my tax returns to show that I make enough money to invest in you, but if not, I'll just send it. I'll send it in an envelope, and you can invest it.
Yeah, we were in the first round anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the first round, you guys are definitely doing good on.
Yeah.
But
that's been great. If people do want to look you up and they want to learn more about it, obviously we've got a full show from July of 2022. We've got this episode, but if they want to follow with your story, how do they look you up?
Edison Motors on YouTube. I would say TikTok, but I think the States is banning that in a couple weeks now. So might as well just go to YouTube and check us out there. And it's been awesome. The funny thing is, a lot of people ask about how was our burn rate, like how are you affording these engineers? It's the YouTube one. People that go out and buy our merch, follow us on YouTube. We get revenue from every video posted, and that's enough to cover most of the wages of the guys and the engineers working on the development. So I really, really do appreciate when people watch our videos because it helps fund our vision and our goal. That's how we've been able to survive the last 2 years.
Well, that's the same way it works here. All of our YouTube money goes to Corey, his wage.
Right. Look at our views. We don't have very many.
Look at your wages. It's not very much.
Yeah, it really helps when you live in a parent's basement. I keep them. That's the only way the YouTube money pays for things.
Maybe not on the significant other side of things.
There you go.
Yeah, no, not on that side for sure.
No, that's good. Well, Chace, we really appreciate you taking the time. And listeners, we appreciate you listening as well. Corey, what do you tell them?
Crack a cold one. You deserve it.